and thank you for coming out on this beautiful evening. I am Hamilton Mayor Kelly Yady, and we are here tonight with Bob Chilton from Gable and Associates, and I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Jesse. We're here tonight to answer your questions, and I want to preface this evening that it's about you to answer any questions you may have regarding our second round of energy aggregation. And what energy aggregation is when a municipality pools their resources, and that would be all the customers, and we go out to bid to the market for your energy costs. And what that allows us to do is to get lower rates for your energy. For example, PSE&G can only go out into the market and bid on electricity a certain amount of times. But when you do this through Gable, they can go out to the market several times and bid on electricity. That's how we receive lower rates. The first round of energy aggregation, we save residents over $1 million. And I know the questions that residents had the most last time we were here, and it was a packed house, was, Mayor, what do I have to do? And the answer is you do not have to do a single thing. You don't have to fill out a form. The only form you have to fill out is if you choose not to opt in. That's it. You're still calling PSE&G in case of an emergency. You still call PSE&G with any other questions that you may have. They are still the back end of electricity here. And Bob will go through it. And Gable, this is our second round, and a resident raised a great question. Can you trust Gable and Associates? And when they came to me, I was not easy on them. I actually called around to other mayors and asked what was their experience in dealing with them. And they said, outstanding. And they said, Mayor, if they cannot save your residents money, they will recommend that you do not go out to bid. And you will see a shift from when we were using the last power supplier when it went back to PSE&G. And they'll go through today to answer any questions that you may have. So this will be our second round. And we state that if every resident participates in this round over the next 15 months, correct? We will save approximately $3 million. And the reports that I receive and the feedback I receive from residents is they noticed a change, a drop in their electricity bills. So with that, I will ask Bob Chilton to come up and take over the presentation. And I tell everyone that comes into our town, and because I do take this personally, that Hamilton will not be easy on you with their questions. Didn't I tell you that, Bob?
You did.
Yes, I did. So please don't hesitate in asking any questions. They will stay through the duration, and it is about you this evening to ask any questions. So you can leave here confidently in knowing that Hamilton Township is looking out for your best interest. We are already doing this with Hamilton Township municipal buildings, and we have saved well over $200,000 in electricity costs. That doesn't go back out to the taxpayers. So with that, Bob, I'll ask you to take over from here.
Sure,
Thank
absolutely.
you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate the introduction. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out. What I'm going to do is go through a relatively short PowerPoint and just summarize some of the high points, some of which the mayor has already raised. Should take no more than about 15 minutes, and then I'll open it up to questions, which is the most important part of the show here. So, as the mayor said, this is all done under a state law called the Government Energy Aggregation Law, and then there are rules behind that that the Board of Public Utilities passes. The overall purpose of the program is to allow a municipality to pool all the residents together to create purchasing power and go out to the marketplace. As you probably know, it's been 20 years or so now that folks have been able to choose their third-party supplier. You can get power from the utility, or you can go with a third-party supplier. It's been almost 20 years now that the market has been open. So the point of this program is to create purchasing power amongst all the residents, to go out to the market, hopefully get a better price with better terms than folks shopping on their own or with PSE&G. So the first step in the process that's required in the law is that the town pass an ordinance. That was originally done in 2014, and then a new ordinance was passed last year renewing the program. The requirement is that the municipality must go through a public bidding process. The bid documents, the contract documents are all submitted to the state agencies for their review to make sure they're consistent with the rules before we go out to bid. We initially, with the first round of the program coming to an end last year, we originally went out to bid for the second round of the program last August. We accepted bids in September. At that time, the prices came back, and they were not favorable. They did not result in what we thought were beneficial savings, so there was no contract award made. And then at the end of the contract, everyone that was in the program went back to PSE&G for power supply effective in December. With this year coming, the market changed a bit, so we went back out to bid a second time. The bid was issued in February. I already recapped there. The first round program ended, it was a 17-month contract that ended in December. The new bid was issued, as I said, in February. We first tried last fall. The bids weren't any good, so we just left things alone, let the first contract end. We went back out to market in February. So bids were accepted in early March. Constellation Energy submitted the best price for a 15-month contract that begins in June. That creates the most overall value of all the bids that were created. The price is 11.585 cents. That is more than 10% below the current, the average PSE&G tariff price that has been prevailing through the bid, and even currently, the last 5 or 6 months, the price has been hovering around 13 cents for PSE&G. We do anticipate that the PSE&G tariff is going to drop later this year. And so factoring in that drop, there is still savings projected of about $90 over the 15 months as compared to the average PSE&G tariff price. BGS stands for Basic Generation Service. That's their service. So what are the benefits of this kind of a program? Again, the most important thing is creating purchasing power to go out into the marketplace that folks would not have on their own. The township is able to manage the risk by having the contract terms designed. The supplier does not dictate the terms, the township does, based upon the rules that are in place and the consumer protections that are in place. The contract terms are reviewed by the state ahead of time. The price is established and known for the length of the contract. Unlike many third-party supply offers out there, which follow sort of what we call a bait and switch model, where you can get a teaser price that's good for a while, maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, and then it gets jacked up. This doesn't have any of that. The contract price is locked in. There's no fees. A lot of times in a third-party supply contract, if you want to get out of the contract, the supplier will charge you an early termination fee of $50, $75, $100. That is prohibited under this contract. The length of the contract is specifically defined. It is finite. It's 15 months. Again, comparing it to a typical third-party supply contract, when you enter into one, typically when that contract ends, the supplier just continues and rolls over the contract, and it continues indefinitely at a different price, often higher. And then until you figure it out and go through the trouble of trying to get out of it, the supplier has you. Here, it's a 15-month contract that the township has. At the end of the 15 months, the contract is over, and everyone either goes back to PSE&G for power supply, or if the township decides to go out for another bid and another process, there would be a third contract, and folks would be rolled into that new contract. And that's basically it. Okay. So again, price, there's nothing hidden. The price is put forth. It's in the materials. It's on the website. It's all over the place. Anyone can opt out at any time they want, either at the beginning of the program now. The opt-out period ends on May 8th, so you can opt out anytime you want if you don't want to be in the program. And even after the contract starts, you can get out anytime you want, whether it's the first month, the third, the 5th, the 12th, whatever it is. And there's never any penalties to get out. That's totally your choice. The supplier bills through the PSE&G bill, so there's no change in the way you're billed. You still receive a PSE&G bill every month. There's just simply one line item that changes. It's now would be the third-party suppliers charges rather than public services for the power supply component. We always refer to this as a local purchasing endeavor. As the mayor alluded to, PSE&G, since the market was changed almost 20 years ago, PSE&G, the utility, no longer owns their own power plants. They're not in the business of producing power. They go out to the marketplace. So basically what happens now is the state basically says to you as a customer, your default supplier is the PSE&G. If you do nothing, you get PSE&G power supply, in addition to delivery service, obviously. And the state tells PSE&G when to go out to the market to bid, how long their contracts are. So really, PSE&G has no say over that. They just go out when the state tells them to go out. And you basically are captive to them unless you decide to go to another third-party supplier. So this is another option where your municipality can provide another option for you going out to market en masse with everyone together to try to get a better price. And there's been dozens of municipalities across New Jersey that have gone through this program. It's been about 7 years now that this program has been viable in New Jersey. The vast majority of towns, and this really to me is really the bottom line proof of how the programs work, is almost every town that's done one program has decided to do a second one. And in one case that we've worked with, there's actually a town that's done it for the fourth time. They've done 4 rounds of their program. Go ahead, Jess. So Constellation Energy, as I mentioned, they were the winning bidder in this process. They have been around a long time. They're one of the largest retail suppliers of energy in the United States. They have over 2 million customers totally in North America, including about 30,000 right now residential customers in New Jersey and growing. They've served nearly 500,000 residential customers in other states that have similar types of programs, including New Jersey and other states in the eastern part of the U.S. They have also very recently been awarded contracts by 3 other towns in New Jersey, and they have previously served several municipalities, including Sayreville, Linden, and Plumstead. They have the information that was mailed to folks, had their contact information. They have a toll-free number, they have an email address, and they have a website that you can access through their website. So there's a number of ways in which you can contact them. Cable Associates, that's us. We're an independent energy consulting firm. We're registered with the state. We were hired by the municipality, by the township several years ago at the end of a competitive procurement process where the township went out for procurement, asked for proposals from consultants. We were ultimately hired. We are an independent energy agent. We work for the township. We're not affiliated with any supplier. Any of the suppliers bidding, we have no affiliation with them. Our job is to help the township go through the bid process and award the best, most beneficial contract, if any, and then be available to assist the residents throughout the process. Again, our information was also provided in the program materials. We have a toll-free number. We have a website you can enter through if you want to opt out that way. And we also have an email address, a help desk for the program where we entertain questions and we will provide answers. So how does the program work? On April 8th, the notification package was mailed out to everyone by Constellation. The way it basically works is all the residents in town are initially included, except for those folks that already have their own third-party supply contract, those folks that have their own existing solar panel system on their roof, or residents who during the first round of the program requested to be on the Do Not Disturb list. So those folks were pulled out, and then the remainder of residents in town were kept on the list and were in the mailing that Constellation sent out. The mailing had several pieces, including a sort of summary letter. That's the one on the left, and a program summary, the one in the middle. That's sort of a one-page matrix that gives the basic facts about the program, and then a frequently asked questions page with answers to frequently asked questions that we hear a lot. So if you decide to opt out, it's intended to be as easy as possible to opt out. The mailing included an opt-out card that could be signed. It's coded basically to your account. You can sign that and send it back in the postage paid envelope provided. You can call Constellation on their toll-free program number. You can access Constellation's website and go through that process. Or you can visit our website. That information was provided. You can email us. So there's a number of ways that you can, if you want to opt out, we're trying to make it as easy as possible. There's a number of ways to do it. The initial opt-out period ends on May 8th, and residents that have opted out by May 8th will not be enrolled in the program at all. After May 8th, those folks who have not opted out will be enrolled by Constellation. They will send a transmission to PSE&G telling PSE&G that please recognize this, us as the supplier for this account, effective with the June meter read date. And then that first month of service would be reflected in your July bill. So if you do not opt out by May 8th, as I said, you'll be enrolled by Constellation. That would generate a automated letter from PSE&G. So it's sort of another fail-safe in the process that if we get past the opt-out stage, Constellation enrolls your account, PSE&G, when they get that request, they will send a letter out to you basically saying, hey, Constellation New Energy just enrolled you for third-party supply. Is this what you want? So there's another step, and if you don't want that, you can contact PSE&G and opt out. So it's just another step in the process, sort of an extra protection. So as I mentioned, folks with third-party supply contracts or existing solar were excluded from the eligibility pool and would not have received the mailing. Those folks can still participate. They can opt into the program if they wish. What we always caution people is, if you have a current third-party supply contract, read that first. Make sure you understand the terms and conditions, the price. You can compare it to the price of the program. And very importantly, make sure you understand whether getting out of your existing contract would trigger the imposition of any penalties or fees from your current supplier. Make sure you understand that before you're welcome to join the program. But we always encourage you to check with what you have now. Make sure your current supplier isn't going to ding you if you get out of that and try to join the program. People with solar, by and large, are better off not being on any third-party supply, be it this program or any other third-party supply. It's kind of complicated. If you have solar, you'll understand what I'm saying. The solar has net metering, and PSE&G provides net metering and allows customers to get full retail credit for their production, whereas a third-party supplier can't. So we always take the solar folks out because they really are better off not being a third-party supply. They're welcome to come back in if they decide it's best for them, but we, again, caution people to look closely. The program timeline. So again, the bid award was made in early March. The packages were mailed out on April 8th. Tonight's the public information session. The opt-out period ends on May 8th. The enrollments will happen soon thereafter. That will generate a letter from PSE&G, just sort of, are you sure kind of letter. That'll come out in mid-May. And then if you stay in the program, the service will begin with your June meter read date, which could be anywhere from the beginning to the end of the month. We just say on average in the middle of June. And then service concludes in September 2020 if you stay in for the whole time. Again, you can get out anytime you want. So just a quick recap. All residents except those with third-party supply and solar and those that were on the Do Not Disturb list are automatically included, subject to your open-ended ability to opt out. The contract price is more than 10% below the current PSE&G tariff price, which has been hovering around 13 cents. Even with anticipated drops in the PSE&G tariff later this year and their normal gyrations in their rate, the projection is that the typical resident will save about $90 over the 15 months of the contract. Again, you can opt out anytime you want. Go ahead, Jess, I'm trying to get through this. So the price will remain unchanged. The only circumstance under which the price would change is if something happens, a new law is passed that affects the supplier, that also affects the PSE&G rate. So in that case, the supplier could adjust the price, but only to the same amount that the PSE&G price is changed. So there's no change in the relative comparison. Importantly, PSE&G, hopefully folks that were involved last time would understand this, but I know folks have some concerns in general about third-party supply. PSE&G is and will always be the delivery company. They are regulated by the Board of Public Utilities. They are responsible for keeping the lights on. That never changes no matter who your supplier is. And so if there's a power outage, you still call PSE&G at their toll-free number. That doesn't change. You still receive one bill from PSE&G. There's just a new line item in the bill for the Constellation Energy's charge. If you have budget billing, the supplier, Constellation, is required to set you up with a budget plan similar to PSE&G's. If you happen to receive financial assistance on your bill, like a low-income heating assistance program, you would still receive that. That is administered through your bill. You still receive a PSE&G bill, so you're still going to receive that financial assistance. And finally, some folks ask if I have a worry-free appliance repair contract, does that get affected? Again, PSE&G is still your delivery company. They still provide that service. They still bill for that on the bill. Nothing changes with regard to your contract. So let's go to the last slide, Jess. Yeah, so this is what a typical bill looks like. Just real quickly, so you'll still get a PSE&G bill. They have generally two categories of charges, delivery charges and supply charges. If you're in the program, these charges stay the same, delivery charges, you still get charged for delivery and you still receive delivery service from PSE&G. The supply charges here that are currently charged by PSE&G would be replaced by Constellation Energy's power supply charge. That's the only change. The bill otherwise looks the same. So that is my overview, and the most important part of the show is obviously to take any questions that you may have. Yes, ma'am.
The supply charges, is that very much the same as PSE&G?
It's actually simpler. The question was if the supply charges are the same as PSE&G. It's actually simpler. PSE&Gs, they tend to have several tiers of rates. If it's the summertime, they have a rate for the first 600 kilowatt hours and then over 600 kilowatt hours. And if, like the vast majority of people, your meter cycle spans 2 calendar months, they're going to have a set of rates, because their rates vacillate somewhat month to month because of these things called reconciliation factors. So what winds up happening is you see 4 line items there that adds up to a total. With this program, it's one single price per kilowatt hour, so it's really one line item.
And it's less, the supply?
Correct, correct. The price is about 11.5 cents. So the recent rate for PSEG has been about 13 cents. That will be coming down to like the low 12s, but still, it will still be on average lower than the contract price will be lower than the PSEG rate on average. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
That was one of the questions. Yeah, I saw the 4 because my bill
Yep.
has like 4
Right,
degrees on it.
right.
Also, it's not for businesses, I gather.
It's not. The law does allow for businesses, for the township or any municipality to include businesses. What we have found, and we tried early on when this program first was adopted, we tried to include businesses. First of all, they are on a different tariff rate, so they have to be in a separate group anyway. They'd be priced differently. And what we found, it was really hard to get a critical mass of businesses, and when we did get pricing, it was
No,
lousy.
actually, mine's lower. It's lower, and I didn't want to have to,
For your business.
for the business.
It varies
And
a lot,
So I
right.
worried about opting out. I mean, I didn't.
No. Business
I wanna
accounts,
keep what I
business
have.
accounts are not included for that
Okay.
reason. We found it was much harder to
Okay.
find savings for all the businesses, so we just left it alone.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
What about natural gas? Does Constellation
So,
supply?
Constellation is a natural gas supplier. I will tell you, we've looked at this. We've been asked a lot by towns over the years whether they could also add natural gas to these kind of programs. The problem with natural gas is PSE&G's rate, their supply rate, is usually very low. There's details. Back in my days working at the state, I could tell you about the details of what went into the rate, but essentially there's a lot of factors that sort of subsidize that rate. And it's also really, really unpredictable. So we've never felt comfortable that we could A, save money, and B, give any assurance that the savings would stick. So we've stayed away from natural gas supply because we just feel like for natural gas, I think folks are better off staying on PSEG. We'd love to do it, but it's just the numbers just don't work. Yes, sir.
Hi, so my family has lived in Hamilton Township for over 60 years. We decided to try this energy program the first time around with South Jersey Energy, hoping that it would indeed save us money, but unfortunately when all was said and done, we found that it ended up costing us money. South Jersey Energy owed my family over $180, and we had to fight with them tooth and nail to get that money refunded back to us. So my question is, how many other families in Hamilton did South Jersey Energy end up owing money to? What did the township or Gable Associates do, if anything, to follow up with South Jersey Energy to ensure that they got paid back any money owed to other families in Hamilton? And what's to prevent the same exact thing from happening again this time with Constellation Energy? Because I don't know about other people, but I had enough trouble fighting to get the money back from South Jersey Energy that the thought of having to fight with a company like Constellation based out of a completely different state such as Maryland seems like it would be even worse and a lot more of a headache.
Sure, okay, so it sounds like what you're talking about is a budget billing true-up at the end of the contract. So we have to separate savings from a budget billing true-up. So the way budget billing works, and, it works with PSE&G, it works with this supplier, or any supplier, South Jersey Energy last time, Constellation this time. What the utility or the supplier does is set your budget amount, is they look at your recent historical usage, typically the most recent 12 months, and they multiply that by the rate to figure out what your annual charges will likely be. They divide that by 12 and they set your monthly budget billing amount essentially. That's essentially how PSE&G does it, that's how the supplier does it. With PSE&G, if you're on PSE&G, they always have you as a customer. So what happens once a year with PSE&G is they're gonna true up your budget billing amount. And if your actual consumption was higher than what they estimated when they set your budget amount, they're going to true up your amount and make it higher, and that'll go forward over the next year. And if you owe money under the true up, they'll just roll it into the next year's rate. The supplier does the same mathematics, but because they have a finite contract, whether it's 21 months or 15 months, at the end of the 15 months or 21 months in the case of the first round, the final true up amount, it's either a credit or a charge, has to be assessed on the last bill. So in your case, I think what happened was your actual consumption during the contract was probably somewhat higher than what was the prior period before they established the budget amount. And so there was an amount left over. That doesn't mean you didn't save money, because the math was basically contract with what you owe at the end of the 21 months is contract rate times your usage during those 21 months. What the supplier does is true that up against what they actually collected. They collected a monthly amount of, whatever it was, $100 or $150, and either at the end of the period you were either over or under. Sounds like you were under, so they assessed the charge at the end to add money. It worked out about 50-50. So because nobody uses exactly what they did the prior year, anybody on budget billing, roughly half would have received a surcharge at the last month to true them up, saying, hey, you're a little short, you owe us money. About half would have received a credit on their last month's bill, saying, hey, our budget amount was a little higher than what you actually used, so we owe you money back. And so what we do at the end we do two things. One is during the contract, periodically we ask the supplier for a report, all the budget billing customers, how is everyone faring in terms of what you're collecting from them versus what they're using. And so what we put in the contract is that the supplier, if customers are getting enough out of whack, so to speak, using technical terms, that we ask them to true up and adjust the budget amount so that by the end of the contract it's close to a break even. And then again, at the end of the contract, we ask them for the final file and go through and do the math on comparing what you used and how much you paid and what the final true up is. So it's really a function of budget billing. And the only difference, again, between PSE&G's part and the supplier's part is because the supplier doesn't have you indefinitely for a customer. So whether you're a little short at the end of the contract or you're long and they owe you money, they have no choice but to put that on the last bill and be made whole. PSE&G, you never really notice that because they just roll it into the next year's, and so if you're short $100, they'll roll it into the next year and just tack on an extra $10 a month, something like that. So that's basically how it works, and it will work the same time this time. What we've found is that some suppliers are better than others about being diligent about automatically truing you up along the way. So we have definitely, part of our process is we've gotten more proactive in the last couple of years with regularly asking suppliers for the files, going through them, and we actually just, we'll spend a couple hours on the phone with them and say, hey, let's go through this, these 300 accounts look like they're pretty far out. Let's adjust those and get them caught up so they're not in a big bind at the end.
Yeah, because I had to keep up with South Jersey Energy to get them to refund the money and really follow it closely. It seemed like they weren't going to refund the money unless somebody caught them and said, hey, what are you going to do about this money that you owe?
So we field questions regularly, and that we always encourage folks. It's one of the issues that we help folks deal with. So we have our help desk by email, we have our toll-free phone number. That's one of the issues we help folks with. If they have a question about the budget billing, and they feel like the supplier, they have questions, why is the supplier hitting me with the surcharge, or why did they true up and change my budget amount? That's something we go through. By contract, they have to provide the information to us. We go through it, and then we'll provide you the results of our analysis.
Okay, my question was basically, I hate the mic, because I can speak loud enough so everyone can hear me. I was going to ask for an explanation of what true up was, but you just explained it. And my question to this gentleman is, you got your money back finally after several?
Yeah, after fighting them for months and several emails, and I even met with David Kenny, who's an associate of the mayor, and had to give him all the proof of everything that South Jersey Energy owed our family this money, and it seemed like there was no oversight other than me paying attention to the bills for someone to say, hey, they owe this family some money. So who knows if any other families were owed money and if they got their money back, if there was no oversight.
Yeah, all I can tell you is we ask for a file at the end and get the full list of everyone, what they owe, and we go through the math to make sure that it's correct.
On the billing, does it show the difference of what PSE&G would have billed and what this bill is?
That's one of the things PSE&G puts on the bill. They say this is what you would have paid if you were on
Okay,
PSE&G.
if you opt out, does it show what you could have saved if you were with it?
No, because PSE&G doesn't have that. If you're not in the program, PSE&G doesn't have that information.
So you can only find out. Would you be able to opt back in, or is the only way to get in is in now?
No, you could, if you opt out and you change your mind 6 months from now, you can get back in.
Okay, is there a difference between homes that use oil and those that use gas and those that use electricity? Is there a difference?
So there's not real, because that's your natural gas is not part of this. This is just the electricity. And generally speaking, your electricity usage is the same whether you heat with oil or natural gas. It's more a function of what type of heating system you have. If you have forced hot air, you're going to have electricity blowing fans, things like that. But in general, that's a separate issue. This is not for natural gas, and it really doesn't affect that part of your bill. So whether you have oil heat or gas heat, it doesn't really affect this, because you're an electric customer either way.
So the only thing that this affects is the electricity.
Right, the power supply, the supply charges on your electricity bill. So you're also, if you have natural gas service, you also have a natural gas page on your bill with delivery charges and supply charges, same thing. Those will stay the same. And on the electric side, your delivery charges will stay the same. The power supply charges are the only thing for electric, is the only thing that changes.
Okay, my second question is this. I'm a little bit confused. We have PSE&G, and then we have Constellation, that is the third party, and then we have you guys that are consultants, right? Consultants for the state that that are going to bid for the contract. So we have three sets of people that we are dealing with.
Well, we're really not involved in the transaction. It's really PSE&G delivery, Constellation supply, We're just here to help the town, help the folks answer questions, but we're not involved in the transaction. You know, we're not, our charges aren't on the bill, we're not, it's really just, you know, PSE&G delivery, Constellation for supply, that's it.
Thank you. Okay, on the bill, the charges for delivery electric, that's tiered, right? Depending on how much you use versus,
Correct.
so at one point in time, it's X amount of dollars, and if you use more, it jumps up to,
Yeah.
right? And that will stay the same.
So, yeah, this contract is the same no matter how much you use. PSEG in the summertime, they have one rate for the first 600 kilowatt hours, and then it jumps up for the anything over 600. In the wintertime, and then it varies from month to month, which is the reason you have these several line items.
Just why, can you tell me why they charge you so much for the first 600
PSE&G?
kilowatt? Yeah, and then
So-
again, the next.
So when I had like a full head of hair and it was like brown, and I started at the BPU 35 years ago, it was like that then. Generally speaking, the reason in the summertime they have a two-tier rate where it goes up for the extra 600 is at one point someone did a study and found that the usage up to the first 600 kilowatt hours is usually for the other stuff in your home and not air conditioning. And then if you start using a lot of air conditioning this summer, that's when you start getting into higher usage. So the rate structure is designed to reflect the fact that if you're using a lot of air conditioning in the summer, you're contributing to the peaks on the system, which is driving up costs. So that's the general theory why they do it. They try to penalize people who use a lot in the summer and conversely give you incentive to use less in the summer so you don't contribute to those big peaks when it's really hot and then they might have brownouts, things like that. And I apologize if I got too geeky there for you,
That's okay.
but
Now, I was just sort of wondering, you know, like,
Yeah.
for a delivery charge, why not just put it into the general supply rate
Should-
versus,
should be
I mean,
done.
well,
sometimes your delivery rate is like almost more than what you're consuming, and I'm going like, what do we pay?